What's up everybody, I'm Jason and welcome back to another short video looking at some basic to intermediate level configuration and usage tips for the Canon EOS R5 camera. In this video, we're going to be looking at the AF assist beam. Now before I go into the camera configuration and the settings involved, I want to talk a little bit about a change that has occurred with the move from DSLRs to mirrorless cameras. Now, if you've ever used one of these kinds of speed lights, this is a Canon 600 EX RT, and you've used the assist beam capabilities of it for focusing, you may be familiar with the dim red pattern that it projects out into the world. And you might have wondered at some point how that dim red pattern actually was helping anything because, well, quite honestly, it's not very bright. Well, the reason that works as well as it does is it's not just red light. It's in fact near infrared, essentially IR light, but it's in the near infrared spectrum, which means the majority of the light that the autofocus pattern is projecting isn't visible to the human eye. However, because the autofocus sensor is not part of the metering sensor in a or the imaging sensor in a DSLR, the autofocus sensor can be designed and to remain sensitive to that near infrared light. Now, obviously, if you had an imaging sensor that was sensitive to near infrared light, it would contaminate your images and it would cause them to shift red anytime you had a warm light source or a light source that projected infrared light shining into the environment. And so to compensate or deal with this, the imaging sensors in cameras are all behind what's called an IR cut or hot mirror. This cuts or blocks the infrared light from reaching the sensor so it only sees visible light. Now, the obvious problem with that is when your autofocus system is being driven essentially by either pixels or whatever in the imaging sensor, it too is now behind that infrared cut filter. As a result, none of these older styled infrared based autofocus system or autofocus assist lights are functional or useful with a mirrorless camera. Now this applies not just to the EOS R5, but to essentially all mirrorless cameras currently on the market. To get around that, or to deal with this issue, camera manufacturers have gone back to using what is essentially a bright LED light as the autofocus assist beam. Now, obviously, shining bright lights can be distracting. It can be distracting in a number of situations, but for example, if you're shooting in a concert or a piano recital or at a wedding dinner or even a wedding itself, shining bright lights at your subject is going to potentially cause issues that the older style infrared systems didn't have. Now, one outstanding question in this whole situation is just how important is the autofocus assist beam now or still anyways? The EOS R5, for example, has an autofocus system that's spec'd to operate as low as EV-6 with an f1.2 lens, and in practice, I have found actually will focus at light levels even lower than that. So what does that translate? Because not all of us have an f1.2 lens on our camera. EV-6 at with an f1.2 lens translates to a brightness of EV-3.5 with an f2.8 lens, or 2.5 with an f4 lens. That equates to a exposure of approximately 80 seconds at f2.8 and ISO 100, just to give you an idea of how dark these cameras now, or at least Canon's EOS R cameras, are capable of focusing in. So in a very real sense, you might not or probably don't even need to have the autofocus assist beam firing at all, even though it will still potentially speed up focusing times in some circumstances when you're using it. Okay, so let's talk about the setup on the R5. The default is to have the autofocus assist beam turned on or enabled. And you'll probably want to change this because, again, as I said, the assist beam can kind of be annoying, and given the capabilities of the sensor in the camera, it's probably not all that necessary for you to have on. To adjust or change the settings for the autofocus assist beam, we're going to go to the AF2 menu page, then scroll down to AF assist beam firing. In this menu, you have three options. On, which enables the firing of the autofocus assist beam when needed. Off, which disables the firing of the autofocus assist beam completely. And Canon's recommendation is to set this if you prefer never to have the AF assist beam used. And LED. And LED, according to the manual, quote, enables LED AF assist beam firing by speed lights equipped with this feature when those flash units are attached. If your speed light is not equipped with an LED, or is not LED equipped, the camera's AF assist beam is fired instead. Now, here's where the open question or discussion or possible confusion happens to be. I don't own, obviously, every Canon speedlight flash. With the flashes that I have can find no discernible difference between on and LED. I suspect that if you have the camera set to LED and you have a flash like the SL1 that has an LED modeling light, that it may use the modeling light in the SL1 when it's set to LED, and it would use either the camera's assist beam, or it would use the camera's assist beam basically when set to on. But don't hold me to that. I haven't been able to test that because I don't have, as I said, every Canon flash. And unfortunately, Canon doesn't provide consistent or significant documentation about exactly which flashes fall into which guidelines. What I found in my experience is anything up to and including the EX600 RT is going to use the camera's LED assist beam, or the camera's built-in AF assist beam when you're shooting, when the assist beam is turned on, whether you have the camera set to on or you have the camera set to LED. Unfortunately, as I said, that's the newest flash I have, so some of the newer flashes that may have LED lights or LED modeling lights, LED may actually use the LED modeling light in the flash. So I hope you found this useful or interesting. If you did, please consider smashing that like button. Please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.